Okay, time for the long overdue Midtown guide. I will try to go over the best I can on where everybody should stand, where the typical choke points are, and where you kind of want to hold and watch for off angles. That being said, we will jump right into this match here.
Three, two,
Now, immediately as the game starts, if you are on defense, you want to try and watch out for flank routes, right? This right here up top is the shortest route for flankers to take. It can also happen that flankers might take the bottom route, but typically many of them go up top here. As you can see, I am holding up here to try and match and keep someone from attempting to flank us. And as you can see, Namor is doing just that. And by attacking him, I have now pushed him out of this flank route. Part of your job as DPS players is to watch those flank routes to stop the flank from happening. Your tanks are going to be trying to focus on keeping the convoy from pushing forward. And your job as DPS is not just to do damage, but also to make sure that enemy DPS don't get the flank on the rest of your team. So you want to try and watch that angle up there. And if you hear footsteps up here and you don't see them up here, you need to call out that they're down below. The other thing that you might see for a flank route, another place I like to stand, is up here in this room because there's a health pack here. As Psylocke, I will stand over here and maybe go for a flank or try and get a cheeky pick. This I can do as Psylocke because of the fact that I have much greater mobility. I can get out of places faster. The benefit to standing up over here is if you are a non-mobile DPS, you can poke up here, but it is a shorter path to safety going up this way than it is to be over here on this side. Only if you're hyper mobile can you take extreme angles like that. So as the convoy is going to push up, you can clearly see that our tanks are going to hold here. This is the safest place for us to stand because we can use this area as cover. We can back up to this room here. Any area where there's a safe corner that you can use as cover is the area you're going to want to hold. Offense-wise, they are going to want to push up and then move over here, especially if you have a hit scan or something, or you're a Hela. You can off-angle here to where you can poke at the tanks and at the people at the front line and not get shot yourself, as well as you can, as the convoy moves up, rotate through this room. And your job as DPS, once again, is to make sure that nobody is attempting to take these alternate routes and apply pressure. Your job as tanks is to try and hold this down, and the jobs of supports is to stay alive. Me personally, I like the fact that my two supports are not standing directly next to each other. Now when a flanker attacks, they're within range of each other, that they can help each other out, but also at the same time, if one dive happens, they're not going to get both hit at the same time. You also will have to remember, of course, there are health packs in this room. There is another one up here. There's another one down here. And of course, there was that one over here in this room. Whenever you are playing hypermobile characters, especially like flankers and stuff, you want to know where those are. So what's going to happen here is both teams are going to try and hold this space as much as possible. And the best thing for you to do is to try and find a way to cause pressure to bring them back. You bring that pressure by either getting a pick or by getting a flank. Even if you as a DPS don't get a kill, you can see as Hela is starting to come up here and apply the pressure. As soon as she's up here and applying this pressure, it's going to create an opening for her team in which now they have to do something about her back here. This kind of pressure distracts the front line long enough that the enemy team can get picks, or the offensive team can get picks just like that. You don't always need to get kills with every successful flank. Sometimes a distraction is enough, but that pincering that you want to do is how you get it to happen. So here, as the payload will start to move up and it starts to go around the corner, if you are on defense and your team is holding here at the corner, you off angle from here, or if you're hyper mobile, you can try and go for a flank there. There is a health pack over here in this room. This area here actually breaks down as well. Good to know. And if you are playing a rocket, a res station goes really well back in this room. A lot of times, by the time they come back out to recontest, this area is usually not one they go into too often. That being said, as soon as it starts to push up, you want to, as the offensive team, go over here and try and hold this corner because of the fact that this is really great cover for you and the rest of your team. As you have some people watch this direction, you want to have other people watch over here in this room. These are the two shortest pathways to the payload, and most often people don't go this way because of the fact that it takes too long to get there. Not to say that it won't happen, but it is highly unlikely most of the time. And as you start to move up and you start to try and take space, the checkpoint is not quite as close or as far as you think it is. It's always a little bit closer. It's right here at this point. So So you want to try and get out there relatively quick. We had luckily a touch at the very last second, which really helped out. But try to stay away from any areas that are long sight lines with no cover like this. If you're hypermobile, you can get up and over and around it. That works really well. But otherwise, if you are a Hela or a Punisher or you're walking back here, you don't really have any cover as you turn around and walk back. So use this as cover to apply that pressure. But if you are a flanker, you have good mobility. Coming over here to attack from this way and even using the health kit and going from this direction has worked very well for me in the past. As you can see, our team has retaken this point, luckily, which is really good for us. But the tanks, the pathway that they took was this way. This is probably the safest way to go for the tanks because of the fact that they can still use this area as cover. The enemy team still has to peek out. And this area, even though it's relatively shorter, is too wide and open. There was another piece over here on this side. It breaks down. Anytime you have to walk down someplace where they have clear LOS of you, you're going to take a lot of damage. So it is safest to walk up using this area as cover first, and then try and take the point from here. If you are a DPS, you are a hit scan especially, you can still use this as an area to off angle because of the fact that the only cover that they have is this sort of pillar here and the convoy. But if your team is pushing from this direction and you are a hit scan playing from this direction, you can apply pressure in two ways that will help you get that pressure to get them to back up, just like the Hela did early on in the beginning by going for that flank attack. And hypermobile characters, you typically can move around a little bit more freely. Using the convoy as cover is something I do quite frequently here. So use the position of the convoy as also a sort of guide as to how far you can push and how far you have to back up. Once your team starts to lose this point, you probably need to back up. The pathway to get down there to the point is too difficult without a tank presence, and you need to recognize very quickly when it's time to go. This was one of those moments where it was just time to leave and reset. After you lose this first point, much like we are here, we only have 4 of us here and 2 of our tanks are dead. We can't contest this. With the help of their tanks and the DPS and the support, it's not safe for us to keep fighting. So what we want to do is try and back up as far as we can and give up that space until we can regroup as 6. It is not worth us fighting and staggering harder than it is to just back up and give up space temporarily. Up here, I usually use this as an area of Psylocke to get up and around and sort of get an angle. It's very helpful to get up and over and use it as like a flank route, but it's also one of those areas you want to try and contest. I am more confident in my abilities as Psylocke, so even though my team is still regrouping, I can come up here and try and contest the space early, which is what I am doing. You want to try and contest those angles, those flank routes like I was talking about at the beginning of the game at all times. For me as Psylocke, I know that I like to go up and over here, and I like to try and get a flank on the enemy team. And because I do that, I know that someone else is going to want to do that as well. But seeing that there's too many up there, I back up until I can see the rest of my team, and then I can go back in with a little bit more confidence. But Hulk here is doing the thing where he is zoning me out and not allowing me to get up and to flank over there. In this room is a health pack, which can be useful a lot of times when you're mostly just trying to get out of the fight and try and stay alive. I have not used this health pack very often for anything other than that when I know the team fight is lost and I just need to sort of get out. As the payload will start to move up and around this corner here, there is a health pack in this sewer room here back here that I use quite frequently, but also at the same time, this is one mostly for flankers and people who are mobile because of the fact that once you're in here, it's not really a great place to stand. If you're on offense, it's a handy little health pack because you can use this as cover. On defense, it's not super great or super accessible unless you're very quick with your movement. These routes here are better in terms of like trying to find an angle if you're on defense, especially. You can come up here and you can see how you have full LOS of their team here. And if your team is pushing from this side, you want to try and provide some support this way and also fight for these angles. You can see Namor here doing the flanks, which, Namors do, that they're 2 squids at the back and then hit a support with the right click and they get deleted. You as a DPS want to try and contest and make sure that they don't do these types of things. As it starts to push up as well, you can see here the defensive team is holding around these corners here. You want to try and keep that payload from advancing too quickly and too far, because you can still use this here, this middle piece here as cover before it rebuilds. Once it rebuilds, you do have a new health pack up there. You have more areas and more routes to access. But until then, you want to try and hold this back as long as possible. As you can see here, we can use this centerpiece as cover as well as the payload, allowing us to push them back farther. Here I went once again. I had seen and saw the Namor there, so I am going to contest him here and not allow him to get those flanks off. In Marvel Rivals, DPS are excellent at controlling those routes. A tank can definitely push someone out, but a DPS, if confidently enough, can take out an enemy duelist in the first place. So that, especially with that Namor, well overextended. He was going for a risky play, but a high risk gives you also a high reward. It didn't pay off for him because I spotted him there and I took him out, and it's much easier to take him out because he's in my backline versus me being in his. So here, now that the centerpiece is actually rebuilt, this has become an even easier flank route for you. The health back up here is great. I do believe this thing breaks, though, eventually at some point. This allows me to now get an angle on their backline and also allows me an escape route to go up and around. There's also a health pack in here if you want to get cover and get more safety. This area breaks down as well if you want to have more areas in which to shoot. This whole area is actually gives you a lot more options, a lot more routes you can take. However, in this situation here with Rocket's ult being up and them getting picks, it was not safe for me to engage. I couldn't get an angle on the Rocket ult. And now that this is advancing here, the offensive team now has more space. So this route is more accessible to them than it is to us. And they can use this as cover. And for us on the defensive team, once we lose this corner, we need to back up to this corner here and hold it here. The health pack, there's a health pack over here, and there's another one over here in this room, which are very handy in case you need to get health quickly. And this route over here is accessible. I don't normally go through this hall. I usually go up and around this way. Or there is also another health pack over here and another longer flank route. Typically, if I'm on the offensive team and I have the space, I might take one of these early when they are coming out of the spawn door and hide up maybe behind this wall or over here on the opposite side behind one of these walls and wait for them to pass by to get like an ult or something cheeky on the back line. This is really excellent if you play flankers, if you need that element of surprise. I highly recommend trying and taking advantage of those. For everyone else, the tanks are going to want to hold this corner here because once you sort of get pushed back and you get pushed back to this area, the only cover you have is off the point. This doesn't allow you to access it very easily, and walking out basically just means you're going to get shot for free. So you don't want to give up this corner unless you absolutely have to. So now my team is dying and we are about to lose this corner. You can see here that my tank is now out in the open because we lack the numbers. We don't have a way to contest this point, and you can see that as he was standing in this position, he was getting shot so much there's just nothing he could do. So now once you lose this point on defense, you want to back up as far as possible to regroup with your team. If you can hold this corner, that would be great. But I understand that a lot of times you don't often get to hold this corner because if you lose that point, people are respawning and you usually need to back up. So you want to back up as far as you can until you can regroup with the safety of your team. There are a lot of alternate flank routes. I am personally not a fan of this place while it is destroyed because of the fact that it usually rebuilds while I'm inside of it, and I am not a fan. So a lot of times what I might do is I will try to force the buildings to reconstruct themselves so that way I don't have to deal with it later. You can see us backing up here to this corner because this right here is usually the safest corner to try and hold until our teammates come back, because our teammates can cut through the middle place here. They can also go up and around this way. So we are going to try and just hold this corner. Just like the corner on the second point, we want to hold this as long as possible because of the fact that once we lose it, we have to back up all the way to here. And you can see how much free space the payload gets because of the fact that once you cap that point, it's very difficult to stop. Even though we're fighting right now, it doesn't matter too much because of the fact that we need to be able to stop this cart from going anywhere. I jumped on it for a second to try and use it as cover and also slow its progression. Unfortunately died for it. But you can see here, we are just trying to use this cover as space. You can take these flank routes here. I personally really love, coming through here and trying to get a cheeky attack on someone. But the Groot was also really good at covering some of these routes. So he was coming over here and trying to control this space. But if you are a hit scan or other type player, you can get off angles here to where if the Luna was using the convoy as cover, she wouldn't be able to use it very well. So you always want to try and find those alternate routes in which you can get an attack off and get more damage. You always want to be trying to attack in that sort of perpendicular shape where you don't leave them any safe places for cover. And your best bet at trying to get a pick is using the element of surprise. This, once the room rebuilds and everything, I have used this area quite frequently in order to try and get off flank attacks as like magic or Psylocke. You can hide in here and in these rooms. It is a much riskier play. Remember that as you rotate, you are rotating in a way which is safest for you. Hypermobile characters can take larger off angles, and characters that are non-mobile, such as Hela or something, or Punisher, you want to rely more on your off angles that are short distance between you and the place you want to escape to. There's also, of course, a health pack over here, which is not super great because of the fact that you can use it as cover, but once you're in here, you're kind of trapped. If you're on the offensive team and you have the payload push up to here, it's fantastic. If you're on the defensive team, it's not a super useful health pack, and it's not super useful as offense, even here, because of the fact until the convoy pushes up to this point, you don't have a whole lot of cover. Here's the building reconstructing itself, and now once it's reconstructed itself, I like this area even more because you still have access to those off angles. But now what you also have is this area up here. If you have mobility and you get up here, you can see how much better of an angle you have on the entire enemy team, as well as if you are on the offensive team, you have a whole lot more angles up here, and getting to cover is just as simple as backing up. You're not as easily accessible, and you still have ways to attack and apply pressure. And then once the payload starts to move up and starts to push around the corner here, you can move over to this side and you can see the angles you have on the enemy team here. Same for, once again, if you're on offense or defense. If you're on defense here, you can be up and in this room because it's much more easily accessible to you to try and slow them down, but you can also be up here to attack the opposite side and keep them from accessing this high ground. High ground is super advantageous. Oh yeah, also, by the way, there is a stairway through here. So high ground is one of those things that you always want to try and contest because of the fact that it provides you great angles and great shots to get off on the enemy team, but also it provides you with the fastest way to find cover. Here is one of those areas where you can just be up top and you can apply pressure. And once again, you don't have to get kills to be able to apply valuable pressure. And as you climb and the higher you get, the more you're trying to apply pressure and allow your team to make up and get the rest of the kills than it is to just simply try and kill everyone yourself. Still, nonetheless, you can get great angles being up top, but you are always trying to apply enough pressure that you get somebody low and then hopefully somebody else might be able to get the last hit. You are rarely ever going to be the one that always cleans up every single fight. Once this building reconstructs, it provides you more areas, once again, of areas to shoot up here. And on the defensive team, once it sort of pushes around this corner, you are kind of just, you're really going to struggle to try and retake it without, huge ultimates or something of that. Because once you take this space as the offensive team, you have all of these different angles in which it makes it very hard to contest. And the only safe places you have for cover are this piece here, and that is not super reliable. Now, I know I covered all, the routes sort of as offense and defense on the first round, but I'm going to try and do it again here a little bit quicker from the offensive point of view.
That's better.
Once again, as you're seeing here, I am going up to try and fight for these, go for this flank, but I saw them coming for me, so I immediately baited out what they were going to do, and I pulled them back. I unfortunately got shot when I thought I was behind cover and had to pay for it. So once again, the reason why they're contesting me for that space is because of the fact that once you get up here and you look from this direction, you have access to everybody. Quite frequently, everyone plays in a way where they're just deathballing, and everybody is all grouped together like this. When you come up here and you take these angles and you start applying pressure, you force them to back up or to get to places where they don't want to be. So this is why this area is so highly contested and why it's so much more fought over. This area up here is great for the offensive team to take because it's such an extreme angle, but it's also really safe in terms of your ability to get back. And for the defensive team, this is an area you want to be because it's the shortest route between you and going back to safety. You can see here Namor is doing what he's been doing all game, which is taking those very aggressive angles, which allow him to get great placements in positioning to apply pressure and use squids to get kills. Here we were really struggling to get out of our spawn door, which forced us to use an ult to take up some of that space. You can see here Phoenix is using that high ground to her advantage and applying that pressure while her team is there, but you can see that because of the fact that her team is backing up and she didn't back up soon enough, she is starting to get pressured out and then eventually dies for it. Once your team starts to back up and you realize the fight is over, you need to get out of there as soon as possible. Either that or you need to die on the convoy in order to reset with your team faster. This area here, as you can see on offense, once you get to these long sight lines, it's very easy to apply a lot of pressure. Me, knowing that I have teammates on the convoy applying that pressure, I go to try and find other angles. You see Thor here applying pressure from the left, and me, I'm taking an angle to the right. Once again, because of the fact that I have mobility, I can take more extreme off angles than the rest of my team. Even though this typically wouldn't be safe for a Punisher, it is very safe for someone like Psylocke because of the fact that I can quickly get back to my team. Here, I'm just trying to build my apply pressure and poke so I can get into position to ult. Having a successful ult and pushing them around the corner, we now get to push the payload the rest of the way. You can see them here. Once again, just like I said before, they are now going to try and back up and regroup with the rest of their team. And we are going to try and slow them down or build up more ults or cause more staggers. You can see once again here, I go to my healers, I try to get healed, and I try to follow up with what my team is doing and applying that pressure. Here, once again, as my team is coming from this direction, you're going to watch me try and find another angle. I'm always using the position of my team and figuring out where I want to be after that. As my team rotates this way and goes like this, I am going to come up from this angle, so I'm shooting this way. So we are always attacking from two different angles. I never want to try and always stand next to my team. If I'm standing next to my team, I'm going to take more damage. I'm going to take more shots, which will require more heals and more resources. Here, when I off angle, I can apply pressure, but I can also get out safely. And here, once again, I will try my best to contest this space, just as Phoenix did here. I luckily get the drop on her and I get a kill. And now that I have this area is very safe for me, and I use it as a hiding spot while I am standing over here. Once again, when you are also not, taking those separate angles and applying that pressure, you are taking less damage because of the fact that you're not standing with your team, and your team is then able to require less resources to heal everyone else. If I jump into this ultimate, odds are I'm not going to be able to kill anything. This is the enemy Invisible Woman ult. I don't do enough damage as Psylocke to burst through it. And it's very dangerous for me to go in there. What I'm trying to do in this situation is I'm trying to control this off angle and keep it here ready and build my ult up. While at the same time, if I'm not taking damage, that means there's more healing available for the rest of my team who is. So I am just using this as a way to buy time. Now that the ult is done, now I can engage. And this is what I'm talking about controlling those off angles. Here, Luna is going to die, and then Invisible Woman right after that. And it all happened because of the fact that I went to control this space here, because Phoenix had lost the duel with me. After she lost the duel with me, and after they didn't get enough picks in the Invisible Woman ult, made it very easy for the rest of my team to clean up the rest of the fight. Here, once again, as the payload is pushing up and my tanks are walking forward, they are going to try and keep them as far back as possible. My tanks are going to push up to the door here because they can keep applying pressure. And if they have to, they can always back up to the convoy, which is pushing up. Here, our tanks are trying to hold these doorways because of the fact that the farther that this convoy pushes up and the more they can slow them down, the easier it is to push it the rest of the way. We do not want them to access this corner. So even though we're pushing all the way up, we have resources like our shields or bubbles or overhealth that will allow us to back up safely. But what we're trying to do is to get into position to just slow them down. And here, like I said before, the flank route I was talking about, you use this as a great drop on the enemy, especially if you get there like I did when they were still coming out of spawn. I stood perfectly still waiting for them. And now, once I saw that they had used resources to get back and get behind this area of cover, and they are allowing their tanks to take the damage and try and stop the convoy, I use it as my advantage to take away some of that cover and take away some of that area that they thought was safe, and use it to get 2 kills on their backline on their supports. Because now, not only did they think that this area, which was supposed to be the most dangerous area for them to stand, they backed up into this area of cover, which they thought was the safest, and I was already there preemptively planning my attack. And luckily, my one of my duo partners had mentioned that Luna didn't have her ult yet, most likely. So I needed to get the drop on her quickly before she built it. And luckily, he was right. She was 4% off. So that allowed us to take this second point. Now, Hulk knows that this fight is over, so he's going to back out. And now I am going to push forward as far as I can with the help of my team. And we are going to try and push and take away as much space as we can. Luckily, we get a good pick off on them. Once again, as my team rotates one way, you are always going to see me try and find a different route. I am trying to contest those different flank routes just as much as I want to use those flank routes. I want to make sure that nobody else is there. And here, this Groot seems to be always matching me. So tanks are really good at being able to push DPS out of areas, and that's what he did there. I am not about to take a fight with a Groot up close like that. So here, once again, the Hulk is doing what dive tanks do really well, which is try and slow the convoy down by pushing up to this corner, because once you can get it to this corner, it's not so bad that you can still use this area as cover. But it's usually very difficult to get to that point, because like I said, once you die and respawn, it's sort of difficult. If you can get to that point, great, but if you can't, don't risk your life for it. Remember, on defense, your job is to try and slow the progression down as much as possible. You want to run the clock out. You're not necessarily trying to always get picks. You want to try and go for the safe picks. Let the advancing team try and make mistakes and try and prepare for those. Fast forward a bit here, you see the enemy team trying to contest this area because of the fact that from our view from spawn door, we have to walk down a very straight, long doorway. Very easy for Punisher to apply a lot of damage. We don't have a whole lot of areas to use as cover here. So the enemy team is trying to apply as much pressure as possible, and our support used her ult to try and allow us to take more space by force, which allowed us to walk forward and luckily get a couple of picks. You can see me applying pressure here from the angle, but also not putting myself into too much of a harm's way. I'm waiting for that Invisible Woman ult to run out, allowing my tank to take all the damage and allowing my supports to focus on healing him. The less damage I take, once again, the more healing my tanks can get, because I require less of those resources. So here, trying to apply pressure and get us to continue those staggers, because they already had lost a couple of people. Now I wanted to ult again to try and apply more pressure by getting more staggers. Now, I had heard the Punisher ult, and once again, with my team going this direction, my very first instinct was to try and take a separate angle. It's very difficult when you are attacking someone from two separate directions, that they take so much damage and they usually don't see one of you coming. So right here, from this perspective, I had dashed up and into this room. I'll go back a second here. So right here, once I heard that he had ulted, I dashed up and I went invis, and I went out to take a look to see where he was. I heard Mag ulting. I wasn't sure if he would be able to get the shot, but I was going to try and follow up on whatever he was doing. So there, you see me take out the Punisher because of the fact that while I allowed my team to take one angle, I went up using my mobility as to my advantage, taking a separate angle and looking at the biggest threat, which was Punisher in this position. This is the reason why you want to try and contest this area up here, especially against, Psylocke players or people who have a lot of mobility. We will use this to our advantage to then apply pressure, because there is no safe place for you to have cover down here. So now that my team is applying pressure from the front, I then go to try and apply pressure with them. I try to always take separate angles. You see, as my team is here fighting on point, I am going to try and apply pressure from a different angle. I am always using myself as a sort of pivot around my team. So as my team had gone this way and was shooting in this direction, I was up here shooting in this direction. And then as I went down to apply pressure and needed health, I got health, and now I find myself over here on this side, and I am using it to apply pressure from this side and these angles over here. Every single time I am sort of figuring out where I want to position myself, I am thinking to myself, okay, which direction is my team headed? And I am making it sort of up as I go. It's always great to sort of know where your off angles are, where your cover is, where your health packs are, and how you can use that to your advantage. And sort of always, fluidly changing as, the enemy's position changes, your resources change, and where you want to stand after that. The other thing that you can do, if I didn't mention it already, you can go through this room and use this as an area to off angle when they're using this area as cover. The defensive team, if they can, lots of times when the payload comes up over here to this area and the offensive team starts to push into this and starts to take this area out, the defensive team will back up to this area for cover. If you are a Magic, a Black Panther, a Psylocke, a flanker, then the moment that you come over here and through here as your team is going around that corner and they back up to areas they think are safe, you are there to catch them with the flank, and you can get a quick pick off on them. That area is super handy for that. But also at the same time, once again, if I find myself over here, I also use the same area as cover. I can use this to apply pressure. It's a little bit more open, so it's not super reliable. But also at the same time, this area is super dangerous because a lot of times they walk out of this door. But those are the great flank areas for offense. We managed to take this one into overtime, but it, of course, we've already covered all that. So hopefully this helps you better understand like where the health packs are, where the off angles are, and kind of how you want to rotate and where those certain choke points are. It's super important to remember that as you're trying to defend the objective, you're always trying to defend the objective or take the objective by accessing those different routes and take the areas that are the safest. You want to try and make sure that whatever you're doing, you always have a way to survive. Deaths in this game are super huge. It is not about the kills, it's about who dies a lot of times, because of the fact that you can win a fight off of a single kill, and that's all that matters. So you always want to try and make sure that the risks you are taking are calculated risks, right? When I told you about different routes that you could take, you are taking the routes in which you can access with your character and the ways that you can get out of that. If I am playing someone like a Hela, for instance, I am not about to take this area under here and try and attack because of the fact that they could turn on me and kill me very quickly. If I'm playing Psylocke, I can take a more ballsy angle and get closer to them. As Hela, though, I know that they're not going to, the defensive team is not going to take angles in which it's a very long route back to where they want to leave. They'll always sort of position themselves in a way where it is the shortest path between them and safety is this direction, right? So a lot of times, if I'm playing Hela, I am going to try and access the angles that they are less likely to take and less likely to want to back up to. So here, if you're playing those non-mobile characters, you can apply pressure, you can do damage, and you can continue to do so and rotate as the convoy pushes up. You can also do the same thing from up top and use the advantage of the high ground, and always sort of remember that. Always sort of remember what your kit does and what it allows you to do will dictate where you can position, and that convoy, as it moves up, will dictate how far you can push up or how far you need to back up as either the offensive team or the enemy team. Anyway, this hopefully covers up a lot of the different routes and the areas you want to try and contest. Remember that this is all a team game, so it is just as much as part of like your tank's job to hold space as it is for the DPS to peel or to contest off angles. And supports, you, because are at the very back of all these fights, a lot of times can relay information faster to everyone else on the team because of the fact that you sort of see the bigger picture. So remember, everybody sort of has like their positioning here. Use your communication, contest those off angles, peel for each other, and try and keep that convoy from moving. Anyway, yeah, that's all I got. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thanks.